What do we have here? 9 pounds, 9.8 ounces. Let's see. Alright guys, it's a rainy day outside, so I'm in my room looking like I'm in a jail cell in here. But I got my side skirts propped up in the corner over there. We've been bringing stuff to storage and moving stuff around, and I didn't want them to get messed up. But I had a subscriber, Jason Moore, thank you very much, who sent me some Steeda Underdrive Pulleys. I'm extremely excited, but before I install them, I would like to cover some myths and misconceptions about underdrive pulleys. So let's get into that. Alright guys, as mentioned, I got a package in the mail from a subscriber, and he sent me some Steeda underdrive pulleys. Now, I'm going to clean these up and paint them. But this is indeed the old style Steeda. The new one, they have laser etched Steeda into them. That's about the only difference, and they have timing marks. The old style did not, but they're still just as good. Now, underdrive pulleys get a bad rap because a lot of them are piggyback. Now, when piggyback means that this would attach to your factory damper. So, it's not that great because it adds more stress and it can actually break off. Now, Steeda is the only company, to my knowledge, I could be wrong on this, but to my knowledge, was the only company that worked with Ford to make sure that they got the correct dampening, so the dampener is built in to the pulley. They also worked with Ford to make sure that the underdrive was correct to where they wasn't going to get charging issues or cooling issues running their kit. It is the best kit on the market. Now, the big misconception is pulleys do not add anything. That is wrong. Here's where a lot of that misconception comes from. Yes, on some vehicles, it only gives 3 to 5 horsepower, or frees 3 to 5 horsepower. I want to explain that real quick. It does not give you horsepower, it frees horsepower. Meaning, if you have a 300 horsepower engine and your car makes 255 to the rear wheels, these pulleys free up 10 horsepower. You still have a 300 horsepower engine, but instead of making 255, you're making 265 to the wheels. Makes sense? It allows less parasitic loss to get to the rear wheels. Now, back to the power claims. On some engines, you do not have crazy amount of parasitic loss. Smaller engines, 4 cylinders and stuff like that, they have to get the pulley system close as they can for accurate power. So you don't want an economy car that can't even move the car because the engine's so weak. So they want it to be, as efficient as possible to get the best gas mileage possible. These will actually increase gas mileage. Where this works at is engines that have all the accessories on one belt, and the belt changes directions a lot. So it goes like this, around like the 4.6 does. Each time that belt changes, it creates, in the pulley world, I forgot what it's called, but it's parasitic loss, essentially, because it costs you more power to drive a system like that. So, what an underdrive pulley is if you look at this pulley, okay, where I wrenched it off, we're just going to go by this rust spot right here. So if I put this pulley around this, back to the middle of that rust spot, so from there to there, this pulley has did one circle. Meaning, if this was a driving pulley spinning this pulley, that pulley would only have to turn that far to turn this pulley one time. Now, if you reverse the roles, if this pulley is the powering pulley and it's spinning this pulley has to go 1, 2, 3. It's got to make 4 turns to spin this one time, essentially. So, this is the factory damper, which I thought was bad, but it was not. This is the Underdrive. Now, it is smaller, but it is not insanely smaller. Like, if it was something like that, that would be ridiculous. So, how this works is this smaller pulley is driving a bigger pulley. So essentially, it is spinning the water pump a little slower. It'll spin the alternator a little slower. You don't have to do the alternator pulley if you're worried about charging issues. There is not a huge parasitic drag on that. But it'll essentially spin these slower, causing less parasitic drag or parasitic draw. Now, I can show y'all in the forums back in the days, people was not paid to do this, okay? A lot of people don't trust stuff from sites like LMR and stuff like that. Oh, it's a paid advertisement. And I can assure you, the people on the forums back in the day, they didn't get paid for this stuff. They had to go out and find out for themselves. And as you can see, there's one right here. There's a Cobra 4.6, but it's an NA car. It's still a 4.6. Same principle. 13 horsepower and 10 foot-pounds of torque on the dyno. Back to back, only change is the pulleys. There's plenty of videos online if you go where they're gaining anywhere from 5 to 15 horsepower. Or freeing, not gaining, essentially. They're freeing 5 to 15 horsepower with these pulleys. Now, why a lot of people say, oh, they don't work, goes back to the bad damper characteristics where it's a piggyback and they break off, or they've just heard, hey, that don't work. Because in the performance world, they have got you so fogged with the fact that nothing that costs $200 is going to give you horsepower unless it's, you know, a secondhand nitrous kit or something like that. So essentially, the whole system is leverage. You change the leverage of the pulleys, you change the parasitic drag. Like I showed you with this, could you imagine if this was the crank and it had to spin this water pump pulley? And like I showed y'all, we went to pretty much the middle of the rust and just walked it around until you got back to the middle of the rust, and it's about a quarter of the pulley. So this would have to spin 4 times to get this to spin 1 time. That's just crazy. So again, this is the stock crank pulley. It is dampered. This is the Steeda pulley. It is also dampered. So all it's doing is slowing down the accessory drag just enough. And like I said, Steeda worked with Ford to make sure that it was not going to be too much or not enough. There are companies that just kind of, you know, use the old school approach in pulleys. The thing is, back when people started doing pulleys, it was for drag racing applications. They didn't need to have alternator charging. They didn't need to have cooling capacity for driving down the road, because they ran the quarter mile, they turned around, they shut it off, they threw ice on it, you know, they put a battery charger on it. That's how dragsters, you know, normally go. So every bit of power they got, you know, they would underdrive the accessories like that to free up more power. Well, companies was so used to this approach that they'd say, well, we'll just make this pulley, we'll just say 30% smaller. Well, for some cars that might work, for some that might not. So, like I said, when Steeda went to Ford and said, hey, we want a pulley kit that works with all your accessories in your factory setup, and they went to R&D together, and this is the result. You can see the damper in there. Now, another huge advantage of this is if you see this and the weight, see how it's one piece? You look at this, the weight on the outside and the pulley, there is rubber. That is not one piece. This can essentially, this inner can spin and the outer can stay in spot, or the outer can spin, the inner can stay in spot, but this can slip. You can actually mark a spot on these if they start slipping and go down the road and come back, and one line will be here and one line will be here where it's spun. If you have on acceleration, if you have a squill that you can't figure out and it's only on acceleration, there's a good chance that the pulley is slipping on the rubber. Another good sign is this one don't have it really, but there we go. You see right there? See how this is sticking out further here than it is, say, over here? You'll notice as this spins around and walks that you will actually have really high spots. Now this one, like I said, it isn't bad, but I've seen them where this, like one side was down, like you had to stick your fingernail in there and touch it, and this side was raised up where, you know, you could feel a difference. This is one piece. What they did is in here, and there's a locking ring here, but if you look right, where's that hole? Sorry. If you look right there, that's a void around, and that's a void, and they injected rubber in there, so that helps damper the stuff. Okay, so it dampens vibrations as it's supposed to. Harmonic balancer. It dampens the harmonic frequencies so you don't have unwanted vibration. But it is still one piece the way it's injection molded. You got rubber on the outside, rubber on the inside, and they work together to stop the vibrations. But this pulley is never going to spin free of this, and these do. This is a known problem. This can dry rot very fast. Why I changed mine is I was worried about this. Can you see that? See how that's dry rotted in there? This is a 23-year-old pulley, so you know, I would expect it to not last much longer. I was already there and figured, why not? So these was sent to me by a subscriber by the name of Jason Moore. Jason, I am very grateful that you sent me these. I've never had a subscriber send me anything, so this is awesome. I'm ecstatic. He went supercharger. If you do not know, if you're thinking about running underdrive pulleys, but you're thinking about going supercharger, do not go underdrive pulleys, because you have to go back to your stock pulleys. They're not designed to work with underdrive pulleys. So, if you're going supercharger, stay stock. Fluidine has a stock size pulley that don't have the rubber in it like that. It's got liquid inside that dampens. That would be the best thing to go with if you're going supercharger, in my opinion. But back to this, I can't say enough things. You know, I'm very grateful for I don't even have 700 subscribers, and I have people sending me stuff, and it means a lot to me. He took his time out, he used his own money, he sent me these, and that's awesome. So I'm going to get them cleaned up. I've already took a wire brush and I washed it, and that's some of the little rust there. So I got to get the rust off. But it's been raining all day, so that's why I'm inside filming this instead of out at the car, essentially showing y'all a better representation of how this is going to work. But you do not have to worry about cooling issues. You do not have to worry about charging issues. You do not have to worry about anything using the Steeda kit. I cannot vouch for any other kit, but Steeda did their R&D with Ford. You're not going to find a better kit. There's a reason it costs more than a $40 eBay setup. Because honestly, the pulleys on eBay, they don't have a built-in damper. They piggyback onto this. So essentially, what they do with the piggyback systems is they have a longer bolt. The underdrive pulley would bolt like that. It would be like a through setup, pretty much like this. But there would be no damper on the front. So this pulley would just go on the back side of this pulley. The belt would go here, and this would stay up here just to keep the balance. Well, like I said, the extended pressure on the snout and the bolt, you run into issues of it loosening up, cracking, or just the pulley itself failing, because a lot of these people will do their kits in aluminum. Now, you can get away with aluminum pulleys for stuff like this, but when you have added pressure pulling up, and if y'all don't know what snout failure looks like, go look at PM Performance. Although this is not the same issue, you're not running into a supercharged application making 700 horsepower. I'm just saying, you don't want added snout pressure like that, because it's not a great thing to have. This video, I know, is a lot of rambling, but there is so much misconception over underdrive pulleys. And again, this all stems back from what people's heard. If you ask online, you can make a post right now, and people are going to come out of the woodwork saying how much they suck, and they've never even installed them. I'm getting my information from boards, from message boards back in the day. They didn't have people paying them. They had to go out and say, hey, I wonder if this is going to work. I'm going to give it a try. They give it a try. They posted their results to show other people. And like I showed you on the one forum, 13 horsepower, 10 foot-pounds of torque, that is insane. If I got 5 horsepower, especially out of a free kit, that would be insane. If I got nothing, the fact that this is a solid pulley and I'll never have to worry about that ring again, that does it for me. But I'm going to guarantee you that I'm going to get something out of this. Everybody that has these in the forums back in the day that recommended Steeda, the one thing they always say is the car accelerates more smoothly, it accelerates more freely feeling. So I don't know what to expect. My Fox body had underdrive pulleys. I do not know the kit that was on it. I never had an issue with underdrive pulleys, but I do know that it climbed through RPMs like, I don't know, insane. Okay, a lot of my friends at the time had Fox bodies. Mine just seemed to scream through the RPMs, and I don't know if it was because of the pulleys or the setup that it had, but it did have pulleys at the time. I didn't run into cooling issues. I did at first run into a charging issue, and that's another thing I have to cover. Like I said, Steeda did their research, so you're not going to run into charging issues. But on the older cars like the Fox body had, I think, a 65 amp alternator originally. So it was already a weak alternator. Then you add a pulley that slowed it down, that made it charge less. Now at idle, you would keep the same idle and then slow it down. Alternators have to spin a certain RPM at idle to produce voltage. If you get below that threshold, your alternator is not charging it. It's only charging when you're driving. So you set it alight for, 5-10 minutes. Around here, that's no exaggeration. You can set it alight for 5 minutes. So your voltage is being used out of your battery and then you drive and it charges it. Well, you keep doing that throughout the day, eventually your battery's going to drain more and more, and that's where it got to the part where everybody was complaining. Well, I originally had an issue, but I upgraded to a 3G alternator, 130 amp, put that pulley back on it, and I never had another issue. Also, you can bump up the idle. So on the older Fox Body, a lot of people, their remedy, instead of buying a 3G alternator, is instead of idling at 500 or 600 RPM, they would bump it up to 800 or 900 RPM. So a lot of people like their lower RPM with a cam to get that more aggressive lope, but when you're trying to figure stuff out, you do what works, and they would bump up the idle. I didn't want to go that route, so I went with the 130 amp alternator that didn't struggle at lower RPM to provide the voltage that it needs. Like I said, a 65 amp versus a 130 amp, that's, a significant gain in amperage at the same RPM. So again, piggyback bad, low voltage alternator with the underdrive pulley bad. If you have a stock Fox Body and you're running this kit, you're probably not going to run into any issues with the Steeda because, like I said, it was designed with that in mind. But if you do, you can go back to the stock pulley. You can raise your RPMs or you can upgrade your alternator. That's simple. It's not, if you just run this in the equation, you're still freeing up power because your water pump is a drag. No matter how you put it, you have veins grabbing water, and it's just a fluid. I forgot the scientific name. I was going to try to sound smart here, but it's the fluid in your car is slowing it down. So this is not going to make a huge difference. Now, I know this is a lot of rambling, and I've said this before, but I'm just I'm trying to cover all the grounds of these pulleys because of all the misconceptions. It's just like the NPI heads. For so long, people have hated on them that now everybody thinks that anything NPI sucks, when in fact it can outperform PI stuff. The Dorman intake, the old style Dorman intake versus the new style. The old style give Dorman such a bad name that everybody thinks, even with the new style, it sucks. The new style is essentially a plastic Edelbrock intake, and a lot of people run the Edelbrock intake. It don't make sense why they would say, oh, this metal one that can get heat soaked is better than this plastic one that is the same thing but it doesn't get heat soaked. Does that make sense to y'all? People have to do their own research. They have to come out of their shell, and they have to stop saying, well, I heard, and go from your own experiences. That's why I went back. I went to the old message boards. I didn't go to Facebook and ask people for their opinions. I went and seen people that had real, proof. Them gaining 2-3 tenths with underdrive pulleys. Them gaining or freeing 13 horsepower, 10 foot-pounds of torque. People freeing 10 horsepower, 8 foot-pounds of torque. There's just so much good information out there. Don't just take people's word. It sucks because they heard it. And that's the popular belief in things. Steeda for the win. I've heard BBK's good. I don't know. But I would not run Mac. Sorry, Mac. But I would not run them pulleys. They just went with a range. Hey, I'm going to underdrive it by 30% versus what it probably should be, around 20 to 25%. And it's just too much for the old Fox Buddies. Now, this is a 4.6 car. I do have a brand new alternator. I do have a brand new battery. Not worried about any of that, but you get my point. Do your own research. Go back to the old forums where people didn't get paid for this. I can understand not believing LMR and American Muscle because it could be paid claims. People back in the day had to figure this out for themselves. They didn't get paid claims. They had to come out of their own pocket and test this, and they was excited to go back to the forums and say, man, listen, do not buy these. I lost money. Or buy these. I paid $200 and freed up 13 horsepower. So, that's that. Alright guys, so what do you think? Do you have experience with underdrive pulleys? Do you have bad experience, good experience? Let me know. But do your own research. Don't let people tell you just because they've heard something. Do your research thoroughly. And thank you for watching.
I won't turn around, I done made it this far. Look back now, that wouldn't be too smart. Shoot for the stars even when it gets hard. Put my faith in the Lord with the 16 bars. I won't turn around, I done made it this far. Look back now, that wouldn't be too smart. Shoot for the stars even when it gets hard. Put my faith in the Lord with the 16 bars. I won't turn around, I won't turn around.